was intended for that passage of Scripture. Let's look at another thing here. Not only wealth initiated by faith, but wealth demonstrated by Christ's example. Now, nowhere in this movement's heresy is there a more important than apparent. Let me back up and say this again. Nowhere in this movement's heresy is there more apparent than when it comes to the incarnation of Christ. There's more of an issue. There's more of a hiccup. Many of the movement's followers present Jesus, who looks remarkably, and this is a very disturbing thing, remarkably like themselves. Now, there's a man by the name of John Avizzini. I don't know if y'all have ever heard of him or not. He's a prosperity speaker. And he said on a Trinity Broadcasting Network, TBC, TBN, Trinity Broadcasting Network, that he presents a Jesus that wears designer clothes, resides in a big house, and is so flush with money that he needs a treasurer to help him keep up with his finances. He said that, and he was quoted as saying that on the Trinity Broadcasting Network. That is what he presents. Another person by the name of Frederick Casey Price, we mentioned him earlier, another supporter of this teacher, embraces the hypothesis that since Jesus was financially wealthy, now bear with me here on this, believers should be wealthy as well. On his TBN show, he said that believers should stop thinking Jesus and his disciples were poor. Jesus was wealthy, and the believers are to follow in his footsteps by being wealthy too. Price drives a Rolls Royce as a way of following Christ's example. That's what he says. He's going to follow the example of Christ by living it up and having the best of the best. Now, the idea that Jesus was rich is fabricated. Do you know why? The Bible never predicts him and portrays him as someone that was that way. It tells us that he was born in the modest of households. He was born in a lowly manger. Remember what they said about Bethlehem? What good is there that can come out of Bethlehem? He was born in the lowliest of places and situations. He even warned a man that was eager to follow him. According to Matthew 8:19 through 20, he said, "If you follow after me, I have no permanent place to lay my head." Now, if you're rich, you're going to have a place to stay. And you're going to be able to put the money on the table saying, if you do need a place, this is my place for a good period of time. But he told him, he said, if you're going to follow after me, know that even the Son of Man hath not a place to lay his head. Jesus, God in the flesh, while he was here upon this earth, was not rich. That's fabricated. And anyone that portrays that Jesus was rich and that's to follow after that example, get away from that. The best way to follow after Jesus is to have a servant's heart. A servant's heart. Follow after him. And Jesus promised, he said, it's not going to be easy, it's going to be hard. But not only is wealth demonstrated by Christ's example, but also wealth activated by seed planting. Now here we are to this point. We said we'd talk about it, seed planting. Prosperity theology thrives on the idea that wealth is gained not only in proportion to one's faith, but in accordance to one's giving to like-minded ministries. This is referred to as seed planting, a concept that is essentially egocentric. The more a person gives, they promise, the greater the return. And when they give that money and they send in all these thousands of dollars to help this ministry, do they really get anything back in return? No. But seed planting is something that they call it to get them to send the money in. And what happens is the prosperity person is the one that thrives. The person giving is the one that falters. They're blinded. I believe so. They're blinded by lies. And also, they're blinded because they want a quick fix. It's just like being patient and waiting upon the Lord. A lot of people just don't want to do that. They want a quick fix. They want to come in, they want to hear they're good, they want something to fix their problem immediately. And when they come somewhere and it's not fixed within a week or two, they're out of there. They want a quick fix to get back on the road again. Yeah. Yeah.
I've always thought these guys would say, you send me $1,000 and the Lord will give you 5,000.
Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking, okay, why don't you send me $1,000?
Yeah. Yeah. Throw it back in their court. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Yeah. All right, let's go to number 2 here. I think we're going to be good. We're rolling right along. All right, biblical evaluation of prosperity theology. So we've labeled prosperity theology what it is. We've pulled the veil back, like the Wizard of Oz. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Well, we found out who it is, right? We pulled the veil back, and we've seen it, and we've exposed it for what it is. So the prosperity movement has swept across our nation like a hurricane. I think it's grown. It's grown a lot. Leaving in its path broken hearts, broken dreams, and also a distrust in God. When you come expecting and you're told and you have all these dreams that you've dreamed of, and then like a balloon is popped and the kid cries and the balloon's popped, the last one's popped. That's what happens when their dreams are popped and they're shattered of what they believe to be true. They start to have this distrust in God, and that happens so often. Now, it seems as if the only ones benefiting are the prosperity preachers. We mentioned that already. But a biblical truth regarding physical health. Prosperity gospel proponents believe Christ offers complete healing to humanity in this life based on his death. However, the belief that physical health is guaranteed by Christ's atoning work lacks biblical merit. There is nowhere that says that. There's no biblical merit in that whatsoever. Now, sickness, let's look at some things dealing with physical health, why we're sick. Number 1, sickness is a result of Adam's sin. In the beginning with Adam and Eve, when they were in the garden, they didn't face any type of sickness. They had everything. It was perfect. I've always thought to myself, what would it have been like to have the perfect cinnamon roll? I love cinnamon rolls. Man, I know cinnamon rolls are good, but to have a perfect one, I mean, everything they had was perfect. I mean, can you imagine, like anything that we eat, there's always a flaw. There's nothing that's perfect. But to have it perfect, it's just something that our minds just can't comprehend. But they had it like that in the garden. But when they sinned and they did what God told them not to do, sickness came and was a player in human history. And physical health is part of a sickness that one day we will all step through the vehicle of death. I mean, unless Jesus comes and raptures us out of here, that's the vehicle, the adoption, to wit, the redemption of our body. So how widespread is the curse? Theologians call it this. It's original sin. That's when sin was merited. That's when it took place for all of us. We're cursed. From this day forward, there was only one that was not cursed, and that was Jesus when he was born of a virgin. However, we're all cursed with the sin problem, with the physical part of that. We're going to age and we're going to die unless Christ does return. And that's part of it. Now, number 2, some sickness is related to sin. Some sickness is directly related to personal or corporate sin. Now, if a person goes out in their life and they drink, and they've drunk their entire lives, and they have really just destroyed their liver, that's a result of abuse of alcohol. Okay? Now, I'm not saying anything. I'm not getting on you if you smoke or not. It's a choice that you make. That's a personal choice. But if a person smokes their entire life and they end up with cancer as they get older, that's because there was an abuse of nicotine. And That's a part of aging. That's a part of that happening. But some sickness is directly related to personal or corporate sin. The Apostle Paul reminded the church at Corinth that their misplaced values, pride, and unconfessed sins were the reason for their present condition. We mentioned this before in the book of Corinthians, and I use this passage of Scripture when I do the Lord's Supper, is that Paul, when he was speaking to them, he knew that the Corinthian believers had become flippant. They had become self-centered regarding the attitude toward the Lord's Supper. They weren't taking it seriously. And he said, listen, you need to take the Lord's table seriously. And before you come to it, you need to do a self-examination of your own self. Not a self-examination of someone else, but of your own personal life. That when you come to the table, you make for certain that as far as you can, you make things right. And that's why I always, right before we do that, I always offer, say, hey, if there's something bothering you, if there's something that you need to come and pray and just ask forgiveness for, come do it. Come to the Lord's table, because as I've mentioned before too, none of us are truly worthy, but when we do come to the table, we need to be as close to the Lord, and we need to be making things right, and that's important. Yeah. 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 Oh, we all have. We all have weaknesses. It is. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Obesity, just, I mean, we all probably can do better with our eating habits, but that's part of it. And I think something else, too, is what Paul was saying here to the Corinthian believers is talking about in 1 Corinthians 11:29-30. To what degree did the Corinthians' sins affect their bodies? He told them here, look what he says, for he that eateth and drinketh, for he that eateth and drinketh unworthily eateth and drinketh damnation to himself, not discerning the Lord's body. For this cause many are weak and sickly among you, and many sleep. And what he is saying by this is that some were sick and some even died because of their neglect and not doing what they're supposed to do with their bodies. And so that's important. Number 3 is godly people get sick. We're not perfect, and we're not bulletproof. We get sick. Sometimes we can avoid the old stomach bug and flu bug for a while, but I know that one day it's going to pull into your driveway, and it's going to be there waiting on you when you get home. I mean, it's happened to me, it's happened to you. The Bible contains several references to godly men who suffered with sickness or disease, and this should be a wake-up call to all those who claim that no Christian ever gets sick. I guarantee you Joel Osteen gets sick. They just don't show it the week that he's sick. They just, I don't know what they do. But, yeah, that's right. Maybe it's a little motivational speech a little shorter that week. So, but we look at these people in the Bible. Look at Job. Job was a great man of faith. Such a great man of faith that God said, have you considered my faithful servant Job? What happened with him? He was covered with painful sores that you and I probably can't even imagine what it felt like. Paul reminded the Galatian believers of a bodily illness that he had. He had the thorn in the